Hi everybody, welcome to the Loomy Bin. My name is Joanna, and today we will be making a super soft, super stretchy scrunchie. Now please remember that I am a beginning loomer. I do not know all the tricks of the trades, but I do know what works for me for this project. I probably have about 100 scrunchies made so far, each with different textures, different row counts, different stitches, and this is what I have found to be the stretchiest, softest so far. Let's talk about what you'll need for this project. A pair of scissors, 24 peg loom, stitch markers, your loom tool, and hair ponytail holders or hair elastics. You can find both of these on Amazon, or you can just use what works for you. I like to use these silicone hair elastics inside the lighter colors because it hides better. They have a great amount of stretch in them, but my preferred are these little rolled hair elastics. It's almost like a t-shirt material. It's a flat piece of fabric that rolls, and it has unbelievable stretch to it. So those are great for your darker colors. Like I said, both can be found on Amazon. And then the last thing you'll need is some 5-weight velvet yarn. I prefer to use Bernat only because at the cast off is really hard on this velvet yarn and it likes to fray. So between the quality of Bernat and pulling it through with your hands, you will have less of the fraying of the velvet at the end of the project. So let's begin. For the sake of seeing things better, we are going to start with our gray. Your cast on color is going to be the same as your cast off color. And you're going to be knitting or looming 13 rows, not counting your cast on and cast off. Now if you notice I have a stitch marker, this is the first peg that I'm going to use. We do not use the anchor peg in this project because we don't want laddering. So I like to use this last peg and put a stitch marker on it. Simple knot, pulled taut, not tight. And I'm going to knot it 3 times, pulled taut, and then later on I'm going to snip the tail so that we don't have to worry about it. Pulled taut, not tight. As you can see, there's plenty of room in that peg. And then our last step before we do our cast on is to slip a stitch marker on that anchor so that we don't accidentally forget a stitch or incorporate it where we don't want it to. Okay, so let's begin. Super simple E-wrap cast on. I'm going to be going this way. So simple cast on with E-wrap cast on with a U-wrap finish. So loosely, not tightly. Start with your first peg and E-wrap. Loosely, not tightly. I'm just letting the fabric flow through my hands easily, kind of letting the loom do the tension for me. And I'm going to go wrap every single peg up to 24. Now remember, that's not a wrap, that's our anchor. So we're going to wrap. Take a minute to push them down to the middle. If you're an expert and you've already done this, hooray, I always forget. So I'm just going to scoot it down to the middle to make room for our next stitch. Okay, to finish our cast off, we're going to U-wrap. So first peg with our pink clip, we're going to take our working yarn to the front and wrap it just like that. I'm not pulling tight, I'm not stretching it, I'm just holding it loosely. Up and over And we're going to do that for every peg till we get back to this last peg. Up, over, around, back, over. I'm sorry for the background noise. I am a mom of 4, and I have lots of animals, not to mention a brand new puppy. So she likes to whine, and if you hear a lot of background noise, I apologize, but if she's not up in my business stealing my yarn, then she's not happy. Just going to continue to U-wrap every peg until we get to the end. And I'm a little nervous because this is my first video. I haven't found my groove yet with my looming, so I apologize if I'm not making any sense or if I'm going too slow for you. For this particular project, we just want to keep in mind the word loose. You want to make sure that just about every thing you do is done fairly loosely, just to maximize the amount of stretch in the project. Here we are, our first or our last peg. There's our marker stitch. There's our initial wrap. So we're going to U-wrap that stitch. I'll show that again. U-wrap that stitch. Ha ha ha! Don't laugh. Okay. U-wrap that stitch and up and over with the original. Okay. Now we are done with our cast on. I'm going to push that down to the middle. As you can see, we have an all gray cast on for every single peg. This yarn is our cast on color and our cast off color. So now I'm going to take our second color and add it to it as close to this last peg as you can. We're going to knot it with that simple knot. I tie it in 3s just because it's a 13 row project. Doing things in 3s is helpful for me to remember, plus it's a little bit more secure. This yarn is very slippery, and I have found that sometimes your knots don't stay, especially since we're not pulling them tight, we're just pulling them taut. So you want to make it as close to this peg as you can. There's one. There's 2. And there's 3. Okay. Taut, not tight. And we're going to snip this little tail of the new color that you have added really close to the knot. So now we have 2 strings here. With the second color that you've added, you are going to start row 1. You take, starting from the back on your first peg, E-wrap, and again we do not want laddering, so you're only going to E-wrap and then knit over a few at a time. Do not E-wrap the entire project, because then you're going to get a laddering that you don't want. And it won't really matter when you have the scrunchie stretched out, but I don't know, it's kind of one of my pet peeves. So we're just literally E-wrapping the first row with our second color. This project is 13 rows, not counting your cast on and cast off. Since row 1 is going to be the second color that you choose, row 13 is also going to be the second color that you choose. And your cast on and your cast off rows are going to match. Okay, finish casting off or finish wrapping this row, and I'll meet you at the last peg. Okay, now we're almost back to the last peg. So we're going to finish our E-wrap and E-wrap that last peg, knit over. And so now if you look, every peg that you have should have a single loop of the second color that you chose. Okay? Now, your yarn is between your first peg and your last peg. You're going to switch again. This time you're going to give a little tug on your first string, your first yarn that you chose. Okay? You hear the puppy whining. She's not happy. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to E-wrap this again. Every peg until we get to that last peg, and then we're going to switch colors again. You're going to repeat this process for 13 rows. After you've completed 13 rows, not including your cast on row, I will meet you back here for the finish process. Thank you. I forgot to mention one thing. We're still on row 3. We're almost to the end, and we need to deal with that anchor peg. So at the end of row 3, when you're done, before you wrap this peg, you're going to lift off the stitch and remove that anchor peg, that anchor stitch. Then put your stitch back on and finish wrapping it. Just like that. I've got my anchor, my stitch marker on there. I can remove that. Now, this is the inside of your project, and this is the outside of your project. So you want to keep this yarn like this. Your working loop, you see that? Your working loop, you want to keep it on the inside here. So I have found that the best way to do that is to just kind of tuck it in where it's really not gonna matter. So we can deal with that later. We can cut this tail off and you can sew this in at the end. Don't worry too much. Okay, so we're finished with row 12. Our last row is going to be row 13 with our second color yarn. As you can see, this is what it should look like. Very stretchy. Don't be afraid to pull your fabric apart, stretch out your stitches. It's only going to help. So last row, here we go. Starting with the starter peg, we're going to grab the right yarn, first of all, and we're going to E-wrap. I typically do 5 at a time, but okay. And if you hear any noise in the background, again, it's the puppy. So we're just going to finish E-wrapping this last row. This will give us the 13 that we need to make. And really what I have found is, like, for the amount of rows that you do, I started with 10. I didn't feel that that was enough when I scrunched it together. And 20 was really just too much. Too much yarn excess. It didn't really complement the scrunchie at all. So if you're not comfortable with 13, you can change the number. That's completely up to you. I just don't want you to waste too much yarn because this velvet stuff is not cheap. But it does seem to make fabulous scrunchies. And ironically, it was my last choice for material. I really didn't think that it was going to work well, but it has just the right amount of stretch in it that we want, and they look and feel fabulous. So, last few picks here, and then we're going to see how I close these off. So, we've got all pink all the way around, okay? Now we're going to finish with the color that we cast on with. So I am done with my pink yarn now. So I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail just to work with. I'm going to retie it. I don't know that this is necessary. It may not be a necessary step. I haven't really messed with it that much, but I do it just for the safety of, I just don't want it to fall apart. So there's 2 taut knots. There's our 3rd knot. I pull that one as taut as I can, and then I'm going to cut the excess tail. Okay. Now we are left back again. We're done with the pink. We're back to just 1 strand of yarn. Okay. Now, get it untwisted here. We have it in the middle, and we have our, follow the peg that you started on your first peg, and you follow the stitches all the way up until you see your loop. Take the hair tie and place it on that first peg. Okay, then take your cast on row and slip it over the hook or the peg, just like that. You're going to knit over both the hair pretty and the gray yarn, and if you see, it pulls magically, pulls the hair tie with you. You let go and you've got 1 original cast on color loop here. Inside you have 1 peg starting like a brim, and this hair tie flips and is inside of your material. So now all you have to do is finish your brim, basically. And you're going to go around, grab the next loop, and loop it. This is our loop from before, so our cast on. So I'm just going to stick it there. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll all be surprised. If you find a better place to put it, by all means, but don't forget to grab the loop that you need from your cast on. Okay, so there, and there's the puppy whining. I'm sorry. She's only 5, she's almost 3 months old, almost. And she's very, very much mama's girl. So she goes everywhere I go. She does everything that I do, but she is a yarn thief. So as you can see, I'm literally just grabbing the next loop. And our hair tie is magically inside. So then we're just going to finish these, hoping that you can see. And before you knit over, you're going to want to double check to make sure that you have 2 loops on each peg. Okay, so double checking, just to make sure. This one got stuck. That doesn't belong there. One of these is not like the other. Okay, sorry. Here we go. Almost back to the start. And then we've got one last loop that we're taking and putting over. There's our start peg. So from here, we're just literally going to knit them over. I'm going to take both of these and knit them over. We'll have to work that little tail in. Okay, the puppy has found a bottle. I may end up at some point redoing this video. I wanted to get this out as quickly as I could to you, so that you had the basics down and could play with the project as much as you wanted. These will make great Christmas gifts, great basket gifts for homeless, whatever it is that you are making right now. Even maybe a graduation gift, several different colors made. Okay, so now we are at our last loop, and we have finished gathering our project. As you can see, I'm just going to move these down to the middle. We still have this tail to deal with, but remember, I triple tied it at the beginning. So I think now that I have that gathered, I'm just going to kind of snip it and tuck it in and let it magically flow into the cast off that we're going to do. Okay, final cast off. We are almost done. So you're going to take your working yarn. I typically do it 2 times and then a half, because I don't like to play chicken with cast off. I'm going to cut that. And here's what I mean about pulling it through. You're going to do the super stretchy bind off, and what that means is you're going to skip 1 peg and go to the 2nd peg. Before we start that, let me pause the video and take the bottle away from the puppy so she stops making noise. Okay, here we go. Our cast off. So we've got passing the first peg that we started with. We go to the 2nd peg and we pull our working yarn through. Now I just grab it with my tool just enough to pull it through with my hand. That's going to help save your fraying. Then you're going to wrap it back around to that first peg and pull it down. And pull that yarn through. That's your first peg done. Now we're going to do this again for the first 4 pegs. Skip this peg, go to the next peg, pull it up and through, and then go back to that peg that you missed and pull it down and through. You repeat this process for 4 pegs and then stop. Up and through, and then over, and we're going to go down and through. I have tried other velvets. I've tried the store brands, and they fray way too much for this cast off. So if you can find a different cast off that you like that works with this project, by all means. But I find that this Bernat works really well. So we've got 4 pegs done. We're going to go back to our starting peg, count 1, 2. We're going to remove that. And this is Loom Hook's cast off. It works really well. So now we can continue with the rest of our pegs until our final peg. And every time we do one, we're going to take one off the back end. So when I get done pulling this through, we'll go back to this one, so that we always have 2 pegs and the original one there. So we're going to pull it up. You're going to continue this until you get just to your final peg, or final 4 pegs I should say, and I will meet you there. Okay, so we're getting back to our final few pegs here. And we're just going to finish this off. If you notice, I haven't really been doing any pulling. Like I said from the beginning of the video, it's not a project that you want to have tight. Now we are back to our first peg. Okay, so with this one we're going to treat it like we have the other pegs. We're going to go under, if I can grab them both today, and pull it through, back over to this last peg, pull it through, and then on our start peg we're just gonna give it one last hurrah and pull it through. You are free to take off the rest of it now. And with that, you have a super stretchy, super soft scrunchie. Now with this working tail, I typically take it and just pull it through this side to make it look like it's part of the stitch. So pull it through. And then I tuck the tail in the hole to make a knot and pull it. And just do that a couple times down your line of stitches here, and then you're free to cut that wherever you feel comfortable. And do one more. If you have a better way of hiding your stitches or your working tail, I'd love to hear about it. Like I said, I'm still a beginner. This is just what has worked for me for this project. So, last pull through and then we will be done. Cut my yarn. And there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. Thank you.